good morning, or evening, or whatever it is, wherever you are. I know the majority of you are not actually in Europe. We have more American viewers than British viewers. I don't know how many people watch me with the auto dubbing on. I've been worried about that recently because my sense of humor is very dry, and I suspect that unless I'm going, then it's really not obvious I'm joking. So I'm not happy about YouTube's auto dubbing because I know whenever I'm being sarcastic, it won't go across. Thank you. Good morning, Kitten. How is my cold? It's still here. Thank you for asking. I hope you're well. I hope you're healthy. Thanks for everyone who's here on the dot, ready to go. If you're new to the channel, I do this every Thursday. I pick some games that have been submitted over here, indiegameclinic.com. They have to be work in progress games for this Thursday stream. It's called Indies Under the Knife. We perform surgery on some games. We take them apart. We see what's good about them, what's not so great about them. And they have to be games that are still being worked on, games that are work in progress, games that aren't fully published yet, so they don't have a commercial release. You know, people could maybe play them, but they're not like up for sale yet. And today we are doing a specialty stream about third-person action games, kind of third-person shooters, but one of them seems to be more stealth, I would say, which is interesting because I haven't seen a kind of Tenchu Hitman type game in the indie space recently. And we'll start off with a little bit of a preamble about the genre and what you need to do well in this genre, or kind of what I believe you need to do well in the genre. If you're in the chat, please weigh in because there will be people watching this who are working on one of these third-person action game type games, and your feedback will be helpful to them just as much as mine is. And after we've talked a little bit about the genre, I will jump through these 3 Steam pages before we play the games and just give you my first impressions of them. And you know what they say, never judge a book by its cover, but that's what we do when it comes to particularly visual media. It's not just video games. When I'm sitting there scrolling through my list on Netflix, looking at all the things I've decided maybe one day I will watch 3 years ago, you know, I'm judging a book by its cover. It's part of what we do when we do media selection. And I will kind of talk about that. So we're going to kind of do a quick, before we actually play the games, we'll do a quick review of all of the pages. And that will help to give you a sense of like a player's expectation going into the game, right? So we've got 2 ladies' names, and we've got Rewindead, I think. I don't know how you would pronounce that. So this is the kind of, it says it's an assassination game. You're assassinating your target. You can rewind time, repeat the hit to get paid again and again. Each rewind creates a new threat. Your previous selves all out for the same contract. That is a really intriguing premise. If I didn't read the text and I just looked at the visuals on this page, I would be like, okay, that looks pretty cool. We've got this kind of dark, comic booky kind of graphic design thing. And everything I can see in the footage looks great as well. That's even before we get to the fact that there's this mechanical hook of the fact that you can rewind time, right? And these kind of mechanical looks like this cool Deadpool ninja guy assassinating people. We've also got this time rewind mechanic. So this feels already really creatively coherent and cohesive because we've got a name that is a sort of portmanteau of rewind and dead, which is great, right? That's kind of cheeky. It's kind of darkly comic, which fits very well for a kind of crime assassination type thing. Whether it's a game or a movie or whatever, that kind of dark humor approach makes sense when you think of like movies like Layer Cake and things like that. This kind of like dark crime thing, there to be like a slight kind of pun in the title, works very well. It just feels incredibly creatively coherent, everything we can see here. I don't see any screenshots that make me wince or go, I'm not going to enjoy this. So this is already kind of looking really, really solid. And they're kind of like color grading here really reminds me of sort of earlier Metal Gear Solid games as well, which is quite appealing. It's almost like, you know, if you just looked at one of these screenshots, even just like the colors used kind of tell you which subgenre of action it falls into, because it's evoking things like kind of 80s cyberpunk anime like Ghost in the Shell and Metal Gear Solid and stuff like that. So I don't just look at this and see, oh, there's a guy with a gun. I look at the character design and the colors around it, and I think, okay, this is a action game, but it's more of an espionage stealth action game. So just everything creatively about this game. And all of this is like, even if you put aside that the art style is good, that the art is very high quality, even if someone who couldn't really draw was making a game with all of these concepts and themes, if they'd gone down this route of like this set of colors, this kind of biotech ninja guy, the pun in the title, that to me would all still make a really great kind of creative package. Even if this was like a really shoddily hand-drawn pixel art MS Paint type game, it's that set of creative decisions that go together that kind of make me excited to play this. I know I don't sound very excited, I know, but it's Thursday morning, it's 10 o'clock, I've got a cold, but I am very excited to play this. And I know it's very easy to look at a game like this and go, I couldn't do that, and you're just praising it because the graphics are nice and the models are nice. It's the entire package. It's what it's called, it's the way the text is written. Everything about this feels like it's all pushing in the same creative direction. And that's something that, generally speaking, is a good trait for any video game to have, regardless of whether it's serious or silly, regardless of whether it's dark or cozy, just kind of coherent. Let me just check that my mic hasn't switched to the...
Has that changed it? Has that changed it? I know sometimes my webcam is taking over from my Focusrite. But also, let me just check. Yeah, I've got all of those things on. Hopefully that fixed it if it was doing that. Carbon Machina further up says, do you believe making a third-person action game as an indie is harder because of the expectation? Okay, cool. I'll put a timestamp on that this is when the audio gets good. 9:35. That's when the audio gets good. Sorry about that. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to say about the entire genre, actually, before we go on to the other two, is, Carbon Machina in the chat had a really good question. Do you believe making a third-person action game as an indie is harder because of the expectation? So you're asking a general question, and the answer really requires a contextual answer. And I know that's annoying because this is one of those questions where the answer is always going to be, it depends. And that's because all questions about, like, is it easy or hard to do this thing, or should indies do this or that thing, are to do with the team rather than the market. People will always go, people will always, particularly on YouTube and Reddit, will go for market-based answers because that's the way that they can answer everyone's question at the same time, right? So if you ask someone, which of these genres of games should I make? If that person is just thinking about the market and not thinking about you, they can answer the question very easily because they can say, well, these sell twice as much as these, right? But that doesn't actually factor in the person that has to make the game and what they're good at. So the thing I would say about third-person action games is that this is like a this is like a thing to be aware of about the games industry in general, is in big AAA games like your Ubisofts and whatever, like in a big studio with 100 people in it, there is a sub-discipline of game design and technical design. So like technical design is the overlap between programming and design, right? Because designers in large teams often aren't programmers. Technical designers are, but there will be a team or like a function called the 3Cs: cameras, controls, and characters, right? So any kind of Assassin's Creed game you've played, any kind of Far Cry game you've played, any game that was worked on by more than about 50 or 60 people, if it's an action game, and particularly if it's a third-person action game where you can see the main character, there will be an entire team, or at least a specific designer allocated to working on character controls and cameras. So I always forget the last one. And that should tell you how difficult it is to get these things right, right? And that's not saying you shouldn't do it, but the idea that like getting this good in a AAA or AA game requires one person to dedicate their entire job to it for 3 years or more, that should kind of tell you something, right? Now that's not to say that you shouldn't try and do it, but I think, you know, most of these questions, it comes down to the difference between being a hobbyist developer and being an indie developer. And indie is like a commercial title of like you are independently making and releasing games, right, for an audience that likes indie games, right? And if you kind of treat that as more of a like a professional title, rather than just kind of thinking that everyone who makes a game for a hobby is an indie developer, right? Which is, I kind of prefer to section those off, because then you can have realistic expectations. Because every time someone asks, should I make this or should I make that? And it's like, well, if it's as a learning hobby, do whatever you're interested in, follow your interest. If the goal is to commercially release indie games, then you should be following your interest to a certain degree, but you should also be assessing what you're good at and doubling down on what you're good at. So if you're at the start of your career, you haven't made any games at all, and the games you're interested in making are third-person action games, then great, get started. Start making that thing. Start learning the skills that you need to do that, whether it's like very based on you making the models and the animations or taking them from somewhere else and focusing on the program, whatever it is, start that. But if you've been making games for like 5 years and you've never successfully made a game that is mainly driven by characters and their movements and like how cool it feels to move them around and fight with them and stuff like that, then that maybe would be a bad game choice for you if you intended to finish it and sell it, right? Because the expectation of like how it feels to maneuver that character is going to be quite high among the audience. So, and then there's always like the realism versus abstraction thing, where each of these games we're looking at, they're sort of reasonably realistically proportioned human characters, and that kind of creates the expectation that they're going to move that way, right? Whereas if you make blobby people like Fall Guys, then you're not going to have that expectation, right? So as soon as you put yourself in a position of like making a game about realistic looking humans, it's like, okay, well, I can make a visual novel where they just pop up as portraits, but if I'm moving them around in the environment and doing action stuff with them, then there's a lot more to think about. So there's just so many layers to answering that question, and most of them have to do with you as a developer and what your previous experience is with these things. So we've looked at Rewindead. I'm going to look at M.A.Y.A next. Take on the role of sci-fi warrior M.A.Y.A. Okay. That doesn't feel like a kind of in-world explanation, because if you were a warrior in a sci-fi setting, they wouldn't call you a sci-fi warrior, because sci-fi is like something that exists outside of the story. Capture uplink, master a complex moveset with weapon upgrades, and survive on a hostile planet. Okay, so I'm interested in the complex moveset. And I think master is a good verb to have when you're describing your game, whether it's in a design document or in marketing, because it sort of indicates that like, here is what we're here to learn what to do. And it just makes a very clear promise of what this game design should be about, right? So there's nothing here that tells me there's going to be a story. There's no promises made about that. So I'm kind of okay. If we get into this and there's no story, totally fine. But what I am going to want to do is, see what these weapon upgrades are about, master a complex moveset. And if the 3 Cs, right, most important term from this stream, 3 Cs, if you want to make these kind of games, that's your key term that you can use going forward. You go on GDC Talks, look at all the free GDC Talks that mention the 3 Cs. You'll learn a load of stuff. The challenge here is going to be, does it feel good to actually move the character around and do this stuff? because if it doesn't, then we're not going to get to the point where we care about upgrading weapons and stuff like that, right? And this is kind of a classic problem for action games where there's like a upgrade element of, like, I see this quite a lot. I get action games, there's a kind of grinding, farming, upgrading element, and the basic activity of doing the grinding and farming doesn't feel kind of interesting or satisfying enough for me to care about getting into that kind of reward and investment loop of doing the grinding. So we'll see how this one goes. What we've got here is kind of very Unreal looking type game. I don't know if it is, but it's just got that kind of vibe of like a mix of some very realistic looking assets and then some that look a little bit more handcrafted and abstract. The screenshot that really sticks out to me as not great is this one, and this kind of lowers my expectation of the whole game because it just kind of feels out of whack with what the rest of the game looks like. You know, very, very quick thing you can do with this sort of thing is like have a color palette for the whole game. Like this bright yellow gold background here, even if I just ignore the art style for a minute, look at the kind of colors. Where is this in the rest of the screenshot? You know, why do we have this big kind of shine here drawing attention? I don't know what this image in the background even is. So this is kind of a weird screenshot. And if this wasn't here, I would maybe be slightly more interested in the game. But this kind of feels a little bit amateurish. It's showing me that there's lots of stuff to get. The art style's slightly not in line with what the rest of the game is going for. But this kind of yellow is like, I don't know where this has come from. What I would do is, if you want to make this look coherent and keep using this art style, do like a swab of all of the colors on these other screenshots. You know, maybe pick that lilac from there and make that the color, and then it will at least look like it's from the same game. But it just doesn't really fit. The art style is strange as well. It looks like a kind of Flash doll dress-up game from like a kind of quote-unquote games for girls website in like 2007 or something like that. And I'm not saying that to disparage it, because I think if it was one of those, it would be quite a high quality one. But it just feels kind of slightly like it doesn't fit anything else here. The other thing that I would say that throws me off a little bit and makes me not feel excited for this one is that it says it's a 3D fighter. It says it's an action game. I see one thing here where we're aiming a gun at nothing, aiming a gun at nothing. Standing in a room, standing on some grass. This is the only one where it actually looks like we're engaged in combat in any meaningful way, right? So it's a kind of a little bit kind of underwhelming. I'm not going to watch the video because we'll just kind of see that. But yeah, I mean, if you compare that to this, you've got like dynamic. We're jumping. I'm jumping, and there's some guys that I'm shooting at. I can look at that screen and almost play the game in my head because it's showing me what you actually do in the game. And I think when you've got a lot of screenshots like this of the character standing around or like pointing a gun at nothing, that's not necessarily, I mean, you know, if someone comes to this very skeptically, which they're going to do, that's the whole point of this kind of packaging, wrapping. They're going to look at this and they're going to think, well, this is representative of what's in the game. So what does the combat look like? Well, I think the only time we can actually see it is here, and it doesn't seem super dynamic. It looks like we're going to just be slowly walking, shooting. And we'll see what it feels like once we get involved. And then Tamara is a playtest demo. A classic survival horror, like a kind of Resi 2 kind of vibe. We've got that nice kind of PSX aesthetic. I quite like it. Not just for nostalgia reasons. I think it also makes the game quite kind of legible in terms of seeing what can be interacted with and stuff like that. I think I've already downloaded this, but I'll just check it one more time in case, so we don't get any delay. Yeah, this looks like it's got a very kind of coherent art style and thing that it's going for. So I'm kind of excited for this one. We've got like little demons and stuff. Really kind of nice approach to color and making the character stand out from the environment as well. I think we'll play this first, then we'll check out M.A.Y.A, then we'll check out Rewindead. So let's get Tamara unzipped and get that running and see what we think. Always really interesting to me the kind of the quality of certain games that we see on itch, which are just presented as a playtest. You know, there doesn't seem to be, you know, they're there asking for the devs, they're asking for brutally honest feedback. You know, this one, we look at, you know, compare these two games, right? They are both pulling on similar things. They are appealing to an audience that like third-person character-driven games with an anime girl in, right? That's not a million miles away. This is presented as passion project, a hobby project. The developer is putting it on it because maybe they want to release this someday, but they want feedback. They want to make it good. This one is kind of already positioned as a product. You know, there's kind of telling us how to play the game. It's sort of all of this is written as if the game is already complete, rather than as if it's a dialogue with a community of people who might want to play the game when it's released in future. And I think that's kind of an interesting difference in approach. But it does tend to that's the sort of stuff I often look for, because it shows me the developer's mentality of like, you know, are we doing a playtest because this person isn't sure if their game is good and they really want some feedback to make it better, or are we doing a playtest because someone has kind of basically already finished the thing in their mind, and you know, in their mind it's just I need to build some more levels or something. We will see. Um, any kind of Unity experts know where I should be opening in this, because I've never seen. It looks like they've sent the Unity project. Where's the actual file? Look. There we go. I don't know what was going on. Get that open. Had loaded all the icons and stuff, so I could see which was an application. I can't see it opening anywhere. Let's try that one more time. If it opens and you hear two lots of music, I'll have to remember, because I have a habit of opening games twice, and we have two streams of music. Okay, I've got it. Got the icon on my taskbar this time. So we'll check out Tamara, then we'll check out M.A.Y.A afterwards. Which, another thing to bear in mind, M.A.Y.A is also, I think there was already a game that came out a few years ago that was reasonably big with that title. So that's the thing to bear in mind. Okay, I think I can play this with a D-pad. Move around, climb and crawl with X, interact with X. Okay, everything is where I would expect it to be, I guess, for this type of game. Turn the nudity off for the stream. Sorry to be a spoil sport, but... Just got 2 things. Yeah, I mean, it will be lagging, but also, as we said, this isn't... This is someone just, like, checking out if people like the game, right? Which is just a stage that should happen way before you kind of optimize the game. Okay, let's see. Right, I'm getting a little bit of lag. Seems okay now that stuff's loaded in. Need a key. That's quite nice. I like that I don't actually have to interact with that thing and then like get an interruption that says I don't have the key, which would have been what they would actually do in the 90s. Okay, that's some sort of inventory. We've got like fixed camera angles, like a Resi 1 to 3 game, but they move with you and then they kind of change when you enter certain areas. Feels like a interesting middle ground between approaches. Very laggy when the action kind of kicks in. Well, stuff. I'm wearing my bandages. Bandages on my legs and my arms for you. Bandages. Need a key card for that. Press Y to reload. I'm gonna help you out and leave messages for you, so wherever you find a dirty piece of paper, it's probably litter. But once in a while, it's gonna be me. So for the love of God, when you find one, check your inventory and read it. Okay. I will. Ah! Oh, I'm already out of ammo. Already. Okay, I'm just gonna run away from this guy. The running animation is very funny. Because the arm out thing. It told me how to reload, but it didn't give me anything to reload with. I got a reloading tutorial, but no ammunition, I think. It's like the opposite of a Naruto run. I'm a little bit worried about these cameras. Got some clothes. It's kind of like some of the animations are a bit silly, but because of the art style and the kind of character proportions and stuff, it comes across more as charming than like an error. I feel like I need a bit of some sort of dodge when I'm locked on. I kind of feel like if you're making a game in this genre space, then looking at what Silent Hill 2 was, and then looking at what, was it Bloober? Looking at what they did for the update is a good kind of way of thinking about like what you need to do with the formula to make it kind of more acceptable for people that are used to modern games. This feels okay though. You're kind of locked into quite a big swing animation, and then you can't cancel it, and you can't dodge. So you're basically just either in there and attacking, or you know, there's like a kind of timing mini game, I guess, for how this will work. Got a shotgun. That button on the wall looks exactly the same as the one that needed the yellow key card earlier, which is a little bit confusing. That felt pretty great. Shotgun feels good. Oh. Oh, okay, I can... Okay, so I want... Yeah, it doesn't matter at this stage of the project, but it'd be nice to be able to assign the directions for those myself. Okay, that's my quick weapon thing. That camera... I'm going to bring up something about cameras in a minute, but we'll try and play. Quite a high monster density. Is feeling more like a combat game than a horror game at the moment because of how many there are, but I don't think that's a bad thing when you're at this stage of the project because you want to get these mechanics right, so it's probably better to put in a little bit too much of something rather than too little, and then you can worry about the pacing later on. Let's go in there with the shotgun. Shotgun feels great. I mean, in this kind of game where the combat is more about resource management than necessarily just like making you feel cool. Yeah, I can't strafe around when I'm aiming at all, so I can't get out of that. Like, you can kind of get away with having slightly poo first couple of weapons because you're doing it to make the shotgun feel amazing, and the shotgun is like the ultimate kind of resource in terms of, you know, thinking about how you spend your ammo. Sneakers? I like the dress up thing we're doing here as well. This is fun. Reload each of these weapons. Right, so there's like a kind of tank controls way. The way that the controller is mapped is I can just run around as if it's a modern game with the analog stick, and then the D-pad is also got kind of old school tank controls on. But you also use the D-pad for some of the inventory stuff, which feels a little bit kind of confusing. I can't work out how to change my weapon again now. I'm finding the amount of camera movement is making it hard for me to kind of think about where stuff is in relation to each other in the level. A body. Yeah, I absolutely don't want the tank control mode. Although it does make me think that maybe it's kind of an easier way of navigating the old school cameras. Maybe one of the clash that I'm experiencing is because in fixed camera games you did have tank controls, which meant if you were walking forwards and the camera changed, you were still walking forward. Whereas if I use the analog stick where I can go in any direction and then the camera changes, I'm suddenly pushing in the wrong direction for the camera. So it's an interesting 3C's example that it's sort of the cameras and the way that you move the character in kind of Resident Evil 1 and 2 were kind of inherently tied together because, you know, up is always forward. And that kind of means that it's okay to move the camera a little bit when the player kind of, well, or suddenly even when the player kind of steps over a threshold. Whereas doing that when you're kind of pushing in the direction relative to the character on the screen, it kind of makes that not work. I think some of the camera movements feel like they don't obey the 180-degree rule, which I will kind of I'll look for a diagram on that in a minute if you're unfamiliar with the 180-degree rule. It's the thing from cinema, but it is still relevant for making game cameras. Yeah, true. No, I agree. The camera, the everything we see on the screen looks amazing. Like the audio design is good so far. One thing that we don't have that you would kind of expect from a game like this is kind of like ambient monster noises, and that can help with the camera as well, right? Because if I go into a room and I can't quite see the monster in the corner of the room because it's out of the shot of the camera, but there's an ambient monster noise that kind of triggers based on how close I am to the monster, that serves two purposes. It like helps with the issue that I can't see what I'm shooting at, but it also kind of creates that dread that there's something there. And we're kind of missing that, which is a shame because the audio implementation so far feels incredibly good. But yeah, I that feels like a big missing thing. Really, really great approach to color. You know, we've got a kind of this kind of dreary drab general stuff thing going on with like all of the kind of grainy, dirty textures, but you've still got colors that pop and stand out when they need to. Yeah, that wasn't good. Whatever that was. Are you gonna try and do a murder to me? Is that breakable? There's something behind. You can't like wildly swing either. You have to actually be locked onto something to attack it. Anything. There's some kind of inconsistencies with how the lock-on works as well. But you know what? This is... I think everything the dev has done here is the right order of operations, right? This is a sort of relatively small-scale itch playtest. There isn't a Steam page up for it. They're not begging for wish lists yet. You know, it's not up to just say, praise my beautiful baby. They've put it up actively asking for feedback on it because they know that there's stuff wrong with it. Oh. I think one of the things that the developer is wrestling with a little bit here is that because they want to have some of the feel of the, like, mid to late 90s fixed camera thing, they're trying to do that, and they're trying to modernize it at the same time. And that means sometimes we get these kind of views where the, you know, we can lock on and then it lets us zoom in, like, you know, over the scope and stuff, and the changes in the angle are just too large for you to then be able to kind of comprehend the space as a player. So let's just quickly hop over. There'll be a diagram of this. So when you're making games set in a 3D space, one of the things you have to remember is that players aren't really in the space, right? There's a simulation, and then they're looking at it, and then their mind is making like a mental model of that space. And choices you make about what you do with the camera and how you design the space are going to make it more or less easy for a player to make that mental model and then use it to navigate, right? So one of the things, for example, one of the problems that I've seen sort of junior level designers and environmental designers have over and over again is they make their virtual spaces too symmetrical. And I've seen this with, like, I used to work with a guy in a studio who was like an environmental artist, and he would love going away and looking at real buildings and going, oh, we can make something inspired by that. And he would kind of copy the shape of the building. And a lot of real buildings in architecture are perfectly symmetrical. And it's only once you get inside and see what's in the different rooms that they stop being symmetrical. But the symmetry makes them difficult to navigate in a video game because you're not really there, right? You're not actually there as a player. You're there just kind of, you're making a mental model based on what you see on the screen. And symmetry makes it harder to make a mental model because, well, basically because things are the same, right? Whereas if you have, like, you know, this side of the building is all dilapidated and fallen down, now it's broken the symmetry of the building, and now it's easier to navigate because you can mentally create in your kind of mental schematic, you've now got, oh, the broken down side of the building and the kind of good condition side of the building, right? So that's just one example, but when you're making a 3D space, you need to kind of think about this. It's like, how is the player making a mental model of the space they're in and kind of going, oh, that's over there, that's over there. And the problem with doing these kind of fixed cameras is if you get too clever with it, the player's never going to be able to do that. And I think that's a slight problem with this at the moment. And it's not that you can't make navigation work with fixed cameras in a game, but it does introduce kind of challenges. And where they're trying to, like, modernize that old-fashioned camera from old Resi games here, and like I think bits of Silent Hill had a fixed camera, but not the outside bits. I can't remember exactly. They're doing things like going from the camera here, and then you aim at a character, and then it goes to a scope, and the camera turns in a very strange way, which makes it hard to relate the two angles to each other and work out where you're facing. And this is stuff that we've actually understood in cinema for 100 years now, nearly. If you go to like film school, you will learn about the 180-degree rule, and like all rules, it exists to be broken, of course, but it's helpful to know, and it's probably even more helpful to know in video games, because if a viewer gets confused when they're watching a movie, it's just a moment of confusion that passes in a few seconds. If someone gets consistently confused while they're playing a video game, they can no longer play the video game, and the thing that they're there to do is kind of ruined. So, the 180-degree rule is basically that whenever you move a camera, you never move it. If you've got like a subject, what the camera is pointing at, and there's camera A, and you move to camera B, the angle of movement around the subject should be less than 180 degrees, right? And if you ever do an extreme jump of full 180 degrees from one side to the other, that can still be confusing. Like if you're watching a chase scene and people are running left to right, and then they're running right to left, that will confuse people. And that can be used for effect, right? It can be quite funny to see the characters run from left to right and then from right to left. But it kind of breaks down the seamlessness of what you're watching, and it makes it hard for the audience to understand the space as well, right? And the thing that makes a video game different is that as a player, you're trying to inhabit that space that doesn't really exist, make a mental model of it in your mind, and then use that in order to play the game well. And if we move the camera around too much as a kind of stylistic thing, right, that works okay in a Persona game because we've got like an abstract combat where we can whoosh the camera around however much we want because the player isn't navigating as part of the thing they're doing in that scene, right? So we can kind of be silly with the camera there. There's a lot of stuff here that looks kind of like it's heading towards something that could look really stylish, but I think they need to like make some kind of cuts and decisions to just for the benefit of gameplay for this to really, really work. So yeah, I've got a room here. There seems to be this guy down here. Over the other side of the room, there's some other stuff. and I can change my target with the left stick once I'm aiming, and it goes into this mode, right? And then it's like, okay, I understand what I'm doing. And then if I let go, it goes back here. And that can kind of lead to some weird situations. Like if I go over here and I shoot at this guy, I aim at that guy in the corner, and then I let go. We've got this kind of, we've got a changeover point between two fixed cameras that's quite a big angular change. And you know, I'm saying all this, I think the developer is aware of the 180-degree rule, because the way that the fixed cameras are set up generally does obey them. You move from one to the next one, it moves about 90 degrees. It feels like the developer understands the 180-degree rule, but this aiming system they put in breaks it. And I think some of this is going to come down to how much does the end game lean more towards actually being a survival horror where, you know, you're not really there to kill all of the enemies, versus a third-person shooter where this is more appropriate, right? This looks almost like a kind of, you know, I know there's a gun, but this looks more like a kind of GameCube Zelda type thing we're doing here with this camera. But if we're going to do this, it kind of feels like the camera needs to constantly be following you, and then when you aim, it just kind of dips in closer. And I think none of this is unfixable. None of this is like a big problem. I mean, it will be a big problem if it doesn't get resolved. But I'm just pointing towards the next kind of design question that the developer needs to think about, because I think you kind of need to pick a lane here, and you either go down like the tank controls resi thing, or you make it an over-the-shoulder Dead Space type thing. Because trying to mix them is actually the thing that's causing, in my perception, the problem is coming from trying to mix the things. The problem isn't that this is bad or that this is bad. The problem is that when you put them together, they create a experiential issue of like navigation and disorientation, which isn't fun. And I think maybe if I played the game a little bit more, I'd get used to it, but I don't know. And then, yeah, there's just like little things where we need like ambient monster noises when we go in a room so that we know if there's anything left in the room. And that's particularly important if we're going to stick with these kind of old school fixed cameras. Because like now there's still that guy there, I think. Yeah, there's still one guy there, but I wouldn't know because he's kind of just hanging out in the corner. But that's like a training room. I can see they've put that in there with the robots as a sort of tutorial, but it does kind of raise all of these potential issues. Try to keep your shit in order for once. Make sure you can grab your guns quickly. Organize them into slots. Okay, this is kind of tutorial through letters. That's fine. Monsters can hear you when you run or make noise. Okay. Okay, so we've got a reason to walk and be careful as well. We've got no shotgun shells left. Yeah, I think even if you kind of put a smooth transition between those two angles, it's probably still a little bit too much of a jump. I think if you wanted to like have your cake and eat it and have both things, what I would probably do, and I know that this is easier said than done, I absolutely acknowledge that. I would almost like try and treat the game as if there is a combat mode and an exploration mode. And when you're in exploration mode, the game can use the fixed cameras. And when you're in combat mode, then we go into like Alan Wake over the shoulder all the time. And like when there's no enemies nearby or the character isn't aware of any enemies nearby, then we can kind of go back into the other mode. That would solve some of the problems. And it may be that you just have, for this type of game, you have a fan base that are just kind of okay with a little bit of jank. But I think it's just that it's trying to do two things at once that are not complementary. Yeah, we only get the kind of aiming mode when there's more than one enemy and we're switching between targets, right? We don't get it when we just aim at the one target in the room, which again is kind of a little bit confusing. Don't murder me! Really like the enemy designs. It's kind of like little... They sort of feel more like dark fantasy than like typical horror enemies, which is interesting. You know, they're like little gnomes and stuff. Oh! I keep pressing the wrong shoulder button to aim. I think that one was a really interesting case study, actually, because there was so many there's so many nice things there. And the camera stuff, it's like there's two different camera directions that are happening at the same time, and neither of them is necessarily inherently bad, but the way that we transition between the two things feels like the clunkiest part of the game at the moment. So I'm sure we could pick up on other stuff and say, oh, you know, there should be a sound effect here, da 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 da. But in terms of like the low-hanging fruit of the biggest thing that could be worked on to improve the game the most, that feels like it at the moment. Yeah. Check it out. Check it out yourself. See what you think. Leave the developer some feedback. That is Tamara. The full demo is about an hour long. I still have reasonably high hopes for that one. And like, you know, I think the fact that the developer is actively soliciting feedback is you would think everyone who sends a game here would be doing that, but it's not necessarily always the case. Remember, like, we looked at M.A.Y.A at the start. I didn't have a great first impression of this. It's a demo already, which, you know, we're not going to get into the demo versus playtest thing right now, but yeah, I don't know who in the chat was talking about the laser sight. Yeah, tuna. Pro country. The laser sight, it exists for a reason. Okay. Why do I have to see my avatar on which country I'm from in a sort of sci-fi character? I don't want to see my avatar or a flag. Okay. So there's a lot of these strange sort of excessive shines around these icons. Make them hard to read. I don't mind the illustration, but I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to put this in a game with like it's not a good match of things. You can make almost any art style work for a game, but it's about consistency between the things you put together in the same game. 7 years after the conquest by the Gal Confederation began, nothing but ash and memory remained of their homeworld. After countless battles in neighboring systems, it is now up to M.A.Y.A to lead the last survivors. Light years lie between them and the war. In the darkness of space, for the first time in a long while, the light of hope shone again. A light that was meant to deceive. Okay, fine. Can I skip this? this is one of those games where it's like they've said it's coming out in 2027, right? So they at least have a realistic timeline. I want to play the game and see what the game is. I do not want a cinematic cutscene before I've even seen if the game is something that does what it promises. Which, remember, I said at the start, we've got some farming and upgrading to do, some sort of upgrading, and we've been told we've got complex move sets to master. I want to do that. I don't want to do a cutscene before we get anywhere else. And that's not like a reflection on what I would want in a full game, but in a demo when maybe not many people have played your game yet and you're still trying to work out, you know, what to do with it, just let people play the actual game. I think people... I guess the way I would put it, this is the most kind of universally I can put this. The first 100 people who play your game are there to help you make the game better. They're not there for you to impress them with what you've done, right? An opening cinematic sequence is about impressing people. It's not about like checking if people can play the game and it's accessible and it works the way that people expect and stuff. Oh, well, my ship's being destroyed. I can go and change my clothes. Okay. You know, there's a change clothes feature. Get your armor from your closet. Okay. Oof. It's rough. But I'm doing a lot of bumping into things. Okay, armor. Put my armor on. Got my armor on. There's a lot of like kind of weird level geometry here where I'm kind of, I think maybe the character's too fast or everything in the level is kind of designed to be the size that you think it really would be rather than the size it needs to be for a game. Because like even just like walking through a door is somewhat challenging because the doors are tighter than they need to be. Visual design's nice. We got this kind of like Space Age Art Deco thing going on. I quite like what we've got in the kind of interior design and the fact that they've, you know, made some of the rooms look different. What are we doing now? Reach your escape pod. Okay. Leave the ship. I'm trying. So yeah, I mean, while it's loading, so in my mind, a demo is something you make when you've already decided to release the game and you're trying to sell people. It's like a free taste test of the full game. And that means that you are trying to impress people. I would wager that this game has not been thoroughly playtested with lots of people before it's got to this stage. So what we're seeing presented in Steam as a commercial demo is actually like early playtest. And we'll see if that actually is out when I start moving the character around and trying to do action stuff. But I just think that's a good rule to set for yourself. The first 100 people that play your game are playtesters. They're almost co-developers. They're there to like sort out the first few problems of the game that you can't even see yourself. And often we see stuff like this that's just like really over-polished in certain ways. Right, we've got loot. Right, well, we can change a view with that. Okay, that just zooms me in and out slightly. I've got a map. All of the UI stuff is very Newgroundsy. I don't know a better way of putting it. And like, you know, anyone who listens to Game Developers Library and me and Tom will know we're Newgrounds guys. We love a bit of Newgrounds, but it's very odd having it mixed with these like high def assets. Okay, set your spawn point at a marked spot. Okay, we're going to go and set a spawn point. The movement does feel MMO as well. Yeah, we've got all of these kind of extruded hills and stuff, which look okay. Again, they look okay in a sort of abstract or like a slightly more stylized Warcrafty style. As soon as you've got a humanoid character and you start seeing these like unreal terrain extrusions with not even like a cliff texture on the side, really, it starts to look kind of silly because one part of the game is setting you up for a particular expectation that the rest of the game isn't meeting. Hi, I am Ina, Interplanetary Navigation Assistant. I will help you on your way. I will see if I can turn the graphics down in a minute because it's really really, what do these mean? What are these? So we're kind of tearing quite a bit. I'll turn the advanced lighting off. Okay. We must destroy the troops before they can communicate our position. Take a look in the closed chest. There is a M.A.Y.A weapon in it. Are they enemies? They came out, but they're gone? I mean, it's tearing like crazy. Change weapon. X. Okay. Give me that. What's that? Eliminate the enemies. They're red on the minimap. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to play this for very long because it's so laggy. Look, I've got a laggy game at the moment. The game that we're working on has had multiple people say that it lags out on their computer. But the difference is that they are people who have, you know, chosen to playtest a early alpha of a game. Not on Steam yet. Not being presented as a commercial demo. And yeah, we'd like the game to run well for everyone, but it's not the priority at that stage. This is sort of unplayable. Check the settings again. Don't know what these are. I think they are sensitivity of the camera. And then we respawn with these guys just everywhere again. And they're like right next to our respawn point. Like, I don't know. There are so many technical problems here that I can't even really get to the gameplay because we just can't play it. And I can't turn things down. And look, it's fine to try and make high-end games, but you need your games playtested by people and the kind of core problems worked out before you make them look really good. And there are some elements of this game that are like kind of very polished art assets, others not so much, and it just feels like a bit of a mess. And yeah, you know, when I pick up an action game, I'm there to kind of experience the kind of feel good of how things move around and stuff. Can't do that if it's running this slow. And I'm not an FPS, you know, I'm not an everything should run at 60 FPS kind of guy. But you can see the problem is that it's like the frame rate is changing when certain things are happening, right? So it's not just that the game is consistently lagging, it's that the game is lagging when I need to do the thing that the game is about. So we won't spend any longer on that one. It kind of was exactly what I expected from the store page. I looked at this. We couldn't see action shots on the store page. Initial kind of vibes confirmed, I guess. Don't really have much more to say about that one because I can't play it. I mean, it's the Unreal pipeline, right? It's like you download Epic Games because you like certain types of games, and then it's there. You go, oh, this is what this was made in, and that's the kind of pipeline of like Unreal Engine is for a few different types of people, but the people that it tries to appeal to are people who want to make their own games that look like AAA games. And that works if you're already someone who's very technically competent, either as a programmer or like a technical artist, and you've used it in some other capacity and you know how to wield it in a way that produces results. If you just kind of go into it and stick a bunch of M.A.Y.A animations on an anime girl, but you kind of don't know how to make the thing run, you're going to have problems. Right. Tuna, I think that's a really good kind of thought. I know that not everyone makes games to get hired, but personally, I think if you're making hobby projects, that is often a better goal to have, right? Like, I don't want to be boring dad here, but most of the really good high-end indie games come from people who have gone indie after already being a developer or some sort of creative. They're already they're already a programmer in another game studio or in another software studio, or they're already an artist and they do, graphic design or comic books or something, and they bring some other skill in, and then they become an indie game developer. They go indie after working for someone else. And I do think making your initial hobby projects more as portfolio pieces in order to secure work from someone else is a much more sensible and like I want to say commendable, maybe it's not the right word, but acting like everyone can go from like year 0 knows nothing about making games, year 1 or 2 is commercially releasing games on their own as a solo indie developer it's not just unrealistic. I think it's like unresponsible to kind of treat that as a rational, realistic thing. And when you kind of raise that way of thinking, people kind of just treat you like you're being a curmudgeon and you don't care about people's dreams and stuff. But I guess I kind of came from the kind of household where the idea of entrepreneurialism or doing your own thing, starting a business, doing a thing, wasn't really something that ever came up. So in my mind, when I was like still in my 20s and I was like making games as a hobby, the only kind of output I ever saw of that in terms of like, could I turn this into a living, was doing enough of it to impress someone to give me a job, right? And what Tuno's just said in the chat is, like the person from the first game, you can see what they're good at. You would give them a job doing that, right? This person from the second game has tried to do everything and nothing is to a good enough quality to impress you, right? So in those two situations, if we just think of these from a career perspective, the developer of the first game, even if their game isn't finished and they never finish it and they never commercially release it, they've got a piece of work that shows something that they're really good at and they can do more with that. Whereas the person that's kind of tried too much in too many directions ends up with a piece of work that is never going to impress anyone, either as like a individual thing for sale on the internet or as a portfolio piece. And I think it's helpful to think about like what sort of game developer you want to be. Are you a storyteller? Are you a technical art person? Are you a mechanics and systems person and you care about innovation in those areas? And your projects should be pointing towards which of those things you want to explore and prove to the world, because then the worst possible outcome is you end up with a really cool portfolio piece that you can do something with in future, even if it doesn't work as like a individual indie game. a lot of these kind of lower quality games that we get through that are just kind of like, you can kind of tell that they're not going to be great before you even play them, are, you know, someone has an idea and they're just trying to slot in every single thing that video game should have, and they're not really starting from the perspective of like, what am I good at? What skills do I want to focus on? You know, what skills do I want to develop? Like the games that come through that are good are like much more focused in what they're trying to do, and the set of skills that the developer knows that they have or is willing to learn, and then putting aside the things that they're not going to do, right? Moldy, the hobby projects are more important than the degree. I see the degree as more as a way of like scaffolding you to do more projects. But even on a degree, like the people that only do the work that's set for them at university generally don't produce good enough portfolios to get a job. Like the people that have university degrees and get jobs didn't just like go to college and do the stuff that was set in class. They did all the extra stuff. They went above and beyond. Maybe they were already doing it before they went. So I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both, but you know, the or both if you can, but the college route is like there to give you extra on top of something you already need to know, that you already know to some degree. We've in the last sort of 20 years, we've really kind of normalized trying to push everyone to get a degree in whatever. And part of that is like, it depends where you live, but governments are motivated to do that because it keeps young people off their unemployment statistics. But, you know, generally speaking, you shouldn't be paying £10,000 a year or however much it is to engage in a course of study in something that you don't already have like a certain degree of skill in, right? You wouldn't go and do a history degree if you'd never studied history at school and you'd never read a history book. But the way that things have gone in the last sort of 10 or 20 years where we're kind of, they call it increasing participation, which is like they're trying to encourage more people from more backgrounds to go to university and study. And that's good. And it is, obviously there is a good side to that, but the good side is used to justify, you know, taking money from people for courses that they can't really access, right? So yeah, if you want to get into studios or industry, you're going to need a portfolio of work. You can develop that in your own time, or you can develop it by going on a course. But if you go on a course, you need to know how to do the thing a little bit already. And if you do go on a course, you need to understand that the courses are usually structured around the lowest ability people in the class, right? So just showing up and doing the things you're told to do to get a grade is not necessarily going to be good enough to actually get a job, because it's not going to produce a portfolio that shows that someone is already employable. And I know that might sound unfair. Like you see all these people complaining about, oh, you need senior level experience to get a junior level job. That's not necessarily true. To get a junior level job, though, you need to be able to do some sort of thing to a level where it's worth someone's, you know, it's worth paying you for it, right? You know, like I'm a small business person now. I have people who do bits of work for me on my games or stuff on my channel. I would happily take someone who was fresh out of college to do something like that for me, like edit a video or do some art for my game, but only if they could show that they could do it to the same standard as someone else who is already doing it professionally, right? So it's really not a binary, do you, you know, it's not a binary like, do you go to college or do you do it as a hobby? You should really be doing both. It's kind of like, I feel like games is one of the only areas where people ask this. Like people don't, I mean, I guess they do, but I feel like people would be more understanding of the idea that, you know, when you're 18 or 20 or whatever, you don't go to college to study music having never written a song or played an instrument, right? And if you do, you're going to be massively behind, and that means that it might be a waste of your money. But for some reason with games, because it's not a subject that exists at a school level when people are like 12 to 18, it's kind of okay for them to go to university or college with no previous experience and just like, hey, teach me everything from scratch. And that what the effect that actually tends to have is when you do have colleges and universities that accept anyone, even if they don't have a portfolio or they haven't made a game before, they then have to like adjust their classes because they end up with, you know, 60-70% of the class having no experience, so they have to simplify everything. And then that means that if you go in and you've got a lot of potential because you have a hobbyist background, you end up coasting and not pushing yourself very hard. The reality is in the UK, the statistics for like what percentage of people leave a university degree in game development, game design, comp sci for games, and actually go into a game-specific job afterwards is very low. It's between like 5 and 10%. And part of the reason for that is that the course can only push you to a level that is reasonable for all of the students, right? So the level that you're actually being pushed to get a pass or to get like 70%, which is what like a first degree is where I used to teach, is kind of just, it's not really like you have to do work at the level that you would be required to get a junior level job, right? So I know I'm kind of waffling now, but hopefully that helps more than one person. How to play. WAS to move, space to shoot, left mouse button to shoot. Okay, we've got a nice simple moveset by the looks of it. E to melee dash, hold shift to slow time, F to fast restart. Okay, let's do it. Yeah, I've done hiring manager stuff before, and one of the first things I would scan for was like, are any of the projects self-directed, or is everything just I did this because someone in authority told me to do it? Because that's like, it's not even a skills thing, that's like a soft skills thing of if the person never does anything off their own back, then you probably don't want to employ them to do a thing anyway because they don't have any initiative. Interface here is kind of simple but stylish. First hit, target, Ronnie York. Affiliation, Kiltech. HR from Kiltech. Take him out before he boards the train, twice. And remember to keep your timeline clean, contractor. Okay. Interesting. Okay, shift is to slow time. Okay, and now I'm going to do it again. But I have to kill him and the previous version of myself? This is a great concept. I don't quite get it yet. I failed it because I didn't kill the first version of myself. This is kind of fascinating. What I like here as well is you can see the art looks very glossy. It's very stylish. But the moveset is very, very simple. And that's probably a good idea in a game that has such a strange concept. Like, if we've got to learn an unusual game structure like this looping thing where you have to kill the guy and also kill yourself, then we don't want to also have to learn a more complicated rule set than we would need for a similar game, right? Let's try again. Replay it. It's neat. Like I said at the start, everything kind of creatively pushing in the same direction. B that time. Oh, okay. So you get scored for doing both of them fast, right? So you do the first assassination fast, and you get a higher score because you took less seconds or fewer seconds. But then that makes it more difficult the second time because you have to assassinate yourself. So yeah, Tuna, like you said, if you wait for longer, you leave a bigger window of time, you make your second run easier, but you score less. So I need to get the total under 13 seconds to get an A in this. This is great because it kind of creates a puzzle out of a shooting game. F is fast restart, so I'm going to start using that now. So sorry if it's a little bit jarring to watch when I do the fast restart, but... Okay. I already feel pretty locked in on this one. Oh, didn't get myself. Yeah, it's like it's a puzzle. It's the kind of giving you some of the sort of like there's like a choreography puzzle in some stealth games, right? Like when you play Hitman, for example, and it's like condensing that down into a small little thing. Really, really compelling already. I think, did that still take me 12 seconds, or was that? Oh, 14. Yeah. So that, Burning Fluba said, I imagine you'll be getting up to dozens of copies. Yeah, I hope so. That feels like it's setting us up for that later on. I'm going to try and run around the other side and see if I can do this in a slightly different way. I don't think I can. No. Let's just see if there's a different way of doing it that we haven't clocked yet. Right, now the guy on the right isn't going to get killed by my first assassin, so I kill one of them with each guy. Oh! I missed myself and got the target. And that's wrong for some reason. Amazing. Okay, so I have to kill that guy with this guy because he's facing this way. So we want to do it as fast as possible. Just get him, run past the other guy, ignore the guy by the train, bam. And then I have to remember who to shoot first. It's a really neat little challenge. Did it. Oh, it still took me 15. Okay, I'm gonna keep at this first one until we get it. I think it's doable, but you have to puzzle through the level a little bit first. Dang. Let's just do the next one. It's good. The balancing feels good as well because this top end of like getting from B to A is really, really tight. Good. It's kind of giving me similar vibes to what I got when I first played Blood Thief. And I think that's kind of a broader thing there of like, you know, I often say on this channel, I don't like action games, I don't like Twitch games. And it's not really true. It's just that is a category of games where you have to get certain things right. And I think the way that a lot of people set out to make games doesn't set them up to do those things well. Whereas this, or Blood Thief, it's like, this is someone that really, really understands action game design and what they need to do, what they need to, like, give the player to do, and the kind of way that they can structure the game to make that interesting. Because this whole thing of, like, having I mean, that was a tutorial level. Maybe the levels are going to get bigger, but, like, having a reason to, like, replay and try and speed run the thing works very, very well with this core conceit of the game as well. Okay, so let's do Mind the Gap. Bob Jr. from Killtech. He's the foreman. 3 loops, 3 payouts. How do we transfer blood money between timelines? It's technical. Okay. Got to kill him 3 times. This is going to start to get really confusing, I think. Yeah, we've got a more complex space to learn. Okay, and he's over there. But now I don't really know where this character is. So we got that kind of spatial puzzling thing that I talked about earlier, but it's deliberate here. It's like the developer knows that that is the fun thing about their game, is gradually learning the level and understanding it from different angles, right? Rather than it kind of being a quirk of the cameras being strange. Not down there. Restart again. Right, I think the way I did it the first time was actually probably the speedy way to do it, was go over this way. And then this guy is then too slow for that guy. Okay. That is doable, but I have to go a bit slower with the first guy in order to, like, give myself enough time to kill myself the second time. Oh yeah, what, melee dash. Yeah, okay, so the melee dash is... you can do it while you're jumping. Let me just learn how to do that. So... Oh, I think it dashes at someone that you're targeting. It's when they've got that border around them. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, we still haven't learned where our third remnant comes from. So I don't know where this is directionally. Okay, round this way. I failed the mission because the last guy has to kill both of them. I guess. I don't know why that is, but it complicates things. It's technical. So technical. Yeah. Wow. I really love this already. Like the fact that there's like the initial puzzle of just working out how to do the 3 runs at all, and then you can speedrun it. Let's see if we can get this one up to B. I'm not going to try and get A on this. It's going to be impossible, but really high skill ceiling for getting... That's what those systems exist to do. These kind of like, you know, level-based how well you did kind of thing. Means you get replayability, but it's from like actually getting better at the skill of the game rather than just like grinding and doing something over and over again when it doesn't require any skill, you know? One more try. Oh, they got me. What just happened? That's a point of like, there's occasionally a lack of clarity of like what's happened to cause my death. I don't know if we need a better replay or something on that, but that's the only kind of issue I'm finding with the game so far. You know, I'm not talking much because it's just getting me into such a flow state. Which is not the only goal of game design, but I think when you're making a third-person action game, then yeah, it is. You know. Oh, amazing. No way I'm gonna... Yeah, this is I mean, it's a much smaller game in terms of scope, but for me this is appealing to the same thing that I get out of a game like Deathloop, which is this kind of like you say, Flurber, that kind of information gathering, kind of Metroidvania kind of stuff in an action game. Oh, I went into the sword. Foolish. It's also a good example of like the kind of super hot type thing of you can get a lot of gameplay out of something with, you know, we've got repetitive enemies. Do I care as a player that I'm killing the same guy over and over again? No, I don't, because it feels so stylish, and it like the way that it's engaging my brain in the routing puzzle and that mixed with the gunplay. It's just okay, let's try the next one. Yeah, I think the line of fire kills are the only thing where it's been like confusing for a moment. I think you could make those look cooler as well, like just doing some Fallout 4 Max Payne bullet timey stuff with the replay. But okay, they really want me to learn how to shoot now. Didn't get there in time. Off. Hold shift to slow to. I'm already doing that. Okay. But you can do it for longer though. I keep thinking that it's really limited and it's not. Yeah, there is a reload mechanic, but yeah, there's no reason for there to be limited bullets. Okay. Let's see if we can do that one faster. I'm not gonna grind the same levels up to A. I could sit here just playing the same level over and over again trying to perfect it, which is kind of what the game wants you to do, but you get the option to I think the time slow recharges, I think. Haven't really been checking. Also, I was underusing it in the first two levels. Yeah, you get a limited amount. It's actually worth... Oh! It's actually worth saving it if you can. The first run, I only really need it for these guys. Oh. These are tough. Tough to get B or better. Okay, the loop closes when you assassinate your target. Remove all remnants from the timeline before you take the kill shot. I mean, that's telling us kind of what we already know, but I guess they're just going to kind of drip feed how the world works through those little briefings as we go through. Assassinate VIP. Okay. Kill Tech Industries. Stairs around the corner. There he is. Got a funky VR helmet on. And the second one, we're already in the building. And he's up there. And he's in bulletproof glass. Ah, okay, we've got two types of glass. We've got bulletproof and non-bulletproof glass as well, which kind of gives us another little thing to think about. Oh, trying to be too cheeky with these ones. Oh, I fell down. Can we go up that way? I feel like I just need to explore the level a bit before rooting too much. Can't. The amount of slowdown resource you get as well is kind of pretty generous. We're messing up that run with the second guy where we get to start up high. Ah, I see. Okay, I'm going to go the long way with the guy at the bottom. It's so much more complex. Ah. Oh my goodness. Spawn you in on the third one with a sniper and it's like, okay, I don't know where I am, but I know exactly what I'm doing now. I'm doing it again. Kind of immediately want to play each one again after the last one. It's just really compelling. Oof. Ugh. Slight improvement. Yeah, there's no way to, like, rewind one, that you said. Which is a shame. Because you do need it sometimes. Next level. Timeline splicing isn't cheap, so make it quick, but not too quick. Okay. Ah. Is that him? Is that the target? That's too quick. that was too quick. Too quick. So we go over here. Can we see the elevator coming down? Okay. There's the third one. The puzzles in the kind of level design of this are really, really good. Let's try again. Oh, that jump. Such an awkward little corner. Maybe I should be trying to shoot through that window rather than jump through it. Yeah. Really makes you feel like Deadpool, this game. All the bullet time, the fact that the game kind of forces you to do things in like weird, overly stylish ways. It's neat. That's the thing I like about games that are built around speedrunning, I think, is like you have to... The speedrunning aspect sort of forces you to do things in like risky ways that end up feeling really stylish, rather than like, you know, doing things in a utilitarian safe way because you're trying to preserve your own life. And that kind of plays into the fantasy of what's cool about the setting or character a bit more than just like, you know, cover-based shooters or whatever. Sure, I can do this one. Oh, okay. Do the next one. Not that way, I guess. Where are we going down? Is that the idea? That orange room down there. The upper floor this time. Behind the fan. Oh, it's so funny. Try that one again. That one was juicy. We were talking before, like a few weeks ago, about how like stealth and assassination games often have this kind of slapstick element, and the more you play into that, usually the better. You want sort of goofy enemies that aren't very smart, and you need that for the game to be kind of understandable to the player, right? And there's just something and I don't think it's just a video games thing. I think in like heist and kind of crime movies, it's all about that kind of dramatic pivot to things all going wrong and the sort of like dark slapstick of that, you know? It's part of what makes people okay with like playing as bad guys, I think, as well, or like rooting with bad guys in crime films. Too many of them there. Ah, poo. I need to think about this. I'm not thinking about it enough. I'm just doing it. Jumps immediately down the hole. Amazing. The last one goes past the vent. So maybe there's a way of like making sure I can shoot the first guy. I jump down the vent like that. Oh, that's the speedrunny way of doing this level. Is you do a jump snipe like that, and then you just sort of stack them all on top of each other, and you shoot the last one through the vent. Oh, that's the sort of speedrun puzzle of this level. There's not enough time to get 2 shots in, so you have to get the headshot while you're doing the jump. go. Right. And then this guy needs to... Trying to piece together how you would puzzle through the speedrun is amazing. Because it takes so many times to do the first one, and then it's like... Oh, okay. Right, so this guy is gonna need to take him out. Right, let's just have a few more tries at this. Okay, that's... Yeah, okay. I'm sort of not understanding the angle of rotation of where to watch from on that second one. I think I've got it now. Oof. Right, so... Maybe if I give it a second before I do the first one. So I go there, wait for a second, then jump. Stand here. No, not for too long. So hard. Right, let's go to the next one. I feel like that I could kind of see where the high level way of doing that was, because on the third one you start on the other side of that rotating vent, and there's got to be some like super crazy speedrun version of this where the first guy dives down, takes the shot as he's going down, the second guy shoots him out the air and then does the assassination, and then the third guy shoots the first guy through the vent. I can kind of see the pieces of it there, but I don't know if it's doable or if the dev has done it, or who knows. I mean, these kind of games, you're always going to find some sicko that does it even faster than the dev, even if the dev is like amazingly good at their own game. That's normal of all kinds of action games, but I think games like this that are deliberately built around speedrunning are just going to have some strange stuff that you just didn't think people were going to do. That was a little bit disappointing that didn't smash then. Okay, I'm gonna stop after this one. After we've actually done this the first time. Don't even know where I'm going on this one. Okay, where are you? Where are you, VIP? Okay, he's in there. Look for the orange lights. Oh, I got shot by my second guy. Ah! Yeah, the environmental... Blurber said the variation in environments is really good. Yeah, it's kind of what I've said about Blood Thief before as well. If you use relatively kind of... You focus on level geometry, right? The kind of playability of the level. The player goes around here, and then they can see over there, and then they can't see over there anymore. All of that stuff. And not on making a simulation of a place. You're going to have a game which is more funner. Because that's the bit that is, you know, you're actually engaging with as a player. Obviously, some games are more about kind of immersion and feeling like you're in a real place and stuff, but... if you're doing that and a skill-based game at the same time, you're probably doing too much for a small indie dev. Ah. Imagine shooting someone in the head while they're jumping. What a skill. What's down here? Nothing. Oh. Tried to sword myself. Didn't work. Ah. That's the first time he's noticed me, that guy. Ah. When did this start happening? Is it because I'm jumping and not running? Wow, you can shoot 2 guys with 1 bullet. So I think it's the first time I've done that. Ooh, final run's hard. I mean, it's also hard because you haven't practiced it as many times, right? Which is an interesting sort of thing that comes out of the design. Is like the 3rd run always feels like it's a chains versus loops thing again. It starts feeling like really tense, not just because it's like the end of the chain, but because you haven't practiced it as many times, so you're not as good as the earlier part of the run, right? Which... Oh. The way that finished really felt like it summarized the game. Like that was a trailer moment of like just seeing both of the previous versions coming from either direction in like a Y formation. Oh. It's great. Really, really good. Jay Foolsguard said, what do you think this game needs to be a full commercial game? The gameplay is on point, it seems like. I mean, yeah, it's there. You just need enough stuff for people to keep playing it. You saw how hard it was to sort of optimize one of these levels to get to S tier, to get to A tier. Let's have a look. So that level... I was doing that in 55 seconds, and the fastest person is doing it in 23 seconds. And then when you get down this end, you've got like 3 people that did it really close together. And 25, 26. But it's so compressed, the fastest people. I mean, this is the kind of game where it's like, we're at this stage, we're not like playing this to be like, hey, what can they do better? Because I don't see a lot of stuff here where I'm like, that needs to be improved. Yeah, soundtrack is good. It's really giving that kind of tech noir thing of like, it all feels like it's got its own kind of flavor and sort of creative direction as well. It's kind of slightly Metal Gear Solid. It's slightly kind of other things like Absolver and stuff like that. And it's got that kind of dark slapstick quality as you're playing it where failure is funny. And I think that is a really good... Oh, Canny said the next level is worth a quick look. Oh, go on then. Oh, go on then. Because Canny K9 said to have a quick look. We're going to have a quick look now. I mean, it is a ghost mode anyway. So it's, how do you do ghosts with 3 ghosts that all appear on different runs? It hurts my brain. Too many boys. Okay, let's try and do a version where we don't. Am I going to come out of there? Am I going to come out of that one? that elevator. Oh, I see. It's like a compressed level with loads of hazards in the middle. You can jump on the monorail. Amazing. Oh. Oh my goodness. The first shootout in this level is so time consuming, and then it's so easy to just fluff the second assassin. Just die really easily without even seeing where you were. Oh, got disoriented that time. This first room is too many dudes. Too many. Need to remember I can still melee as well. Oh, he got me. He's got a little crown. A little crown on. Notice how we're all calling them remnants as well. It's really hard to come up with like a technical term for something in your game and have players use the actual technical term you've given them. And I think that kind of shows a level of buy-in that we're experiencing from kind of seeing this game play out and kind of learning it. That we're all actually calling them remnants. Oh my goodness, there's another one. Oh, you're not allowed to let them kill each other. Oh, dude. Like getting the timing so that you don't do the early ones too early, so that you have enough time to kill the remnants later on, is... It's just amazing that that is a mini game within this game. It's... If you put the pieces of your game together in the right way, it would develop these like little mini games within itself, like glass hitting in a MOBA and stuff like that. And that's where you kind of create all of this space for people to have to practice and get better at it, which you really need in a skill-based game. Taking a bit longer then. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this one in time, so I'm going to shut this down. But this is great. Whew. What was the last question? Nate said, "How do you feel about playtest builds on Steam versus itch? I know your thoughts on demos being a presentable level of polish, but is the Steam playtest a better approach?" I think it's more to do with what you communicate. You know, if you put a thing on Steam and you're doing it as a playtest and you send it out to people, and the Steam page is very clear that what you're presenting them with is, you know, subject to change, then that's very different from setting up a Steam page that looks like you've already decided this is exactly the game that you're making and stuff like that. I don't think it's about the platform. I think it's, you know, the platform communicates something to me, which is why I'm always saying, you know, itch feels more like a hobby platform. And that means when people send me stuff on itch, it feels more like they're saying, what do you think of my game? Rather than show my project because I want wish lists, you know. But there's also the way that you actually talk to people about it and like the message you give them when you send it to them and stuff like that. It's not really about the actual platform. It's about whether you're communicating what you're doing at that stage of the project, you know. Have you basically done a waterfall method of like planning the project and gone, I know exactly what this game is going to be, and I'm 20% of the way there, play my game and I'll make the rest of the 80%? Or are you working in, is your playtest actually a playtest where you're trying to work out what to change about your project? You know, that's the stuff that really, really matters rather than the platform, I think. Yeah. There is a version of that game I could imagine where you start from the previous Remnant, but I think having to work out which of the hotkeys to use to do which type of rewinds would cause a lot of UX problems. But I also really like, I mean, part of this is kind of level design or challenge design. Like the final guy you get, the game is really like remembering what you did in the first three. And I often don't like memory as a game mechanic when it's like remember what the game did. But in this game, it's like, remember what you did, and it just makes everything you do in the earlier runs feel so much more meaningful for you to then have to like remember where you were going. It's really like a really cool a really cool knot of design there. I have some invites to the playtest for that. I will post them on the Discord, and it will just be first come first serve. I didn't realize there was a thing there. So, out of all the games we looked at today, let's just have a quick summary, because I feel like M.A.Y.A was promising some of what we got in Rewindead. We got a really smooth action game here. I like these kind of speedrunning games because I don't know, maybe it's just something about the types of people that make them, but you basically can't have a speedrunning game unless you have a good core action thing and like levels of mastery where you can do the game better or worse. There was so much there that something like this could have learned from. But this was just a little bit too focused on looking pretty, and it meant that the game was kind of unplayable. I would think, again, they you know, I do not have the highest high-end computer here. And, you know, as someone who's put out an alpha of a game that runs very slowly for some people, I cannot be too critical of that side of things. But I would think getting some people to play your game and checking it runs would be a prerequisite of even thinking that you should put your game on Steam in the first place. So I think we might have had some more interesting things to say with this game if it was even playable. But we didn't kind of get to that stage, and that's a shame. Tamara, I put it in this third-person action games category. It's doing a slightly different thing. It is much more in that kind of survival horror vein rather than like speed shooting. I do think this is a really kind of appealing game for me art-wise. The character designs are great. There was some great just kind of mood to it. Even the level design seemed quite interesting, but it was quite hard to navigate because of those cameras. And like I said, it wasn't just a case of, oh, it needs to be over the shoulder camera or it needs to be kind of classic tank controls and Resident Evil cameras. It's more the fact that the developers tried to mix those two approaches together. And in doing so, it's made the game feel more confusing than if it just picked one or the other. I think you can mix the approaches, but I think doing it modally, so it's like, there's a monster here now, we're in action mode, camera comes down over the shoulder. And I can't remember the name of the game. I'm just going to get my YouTube backlog up and see if I can remember the name of the game, because there was a game that I played recently that did mix the kind of camera styles in this way, and I think they did it quite well. If anyone can remember the name of it, it was that kind of Alan Wake homage game. I feel like it maybe had pines in the title. Tall Pines, maybe? Or that's a different thing. That's a TV show. Let me just go back a little bit. A while back. I think that might be a good reference point for the developer of Tamara, because it mixed the camera styles in a way that worked pretty well. It was kind of Alan Wake when you were fighting stuff, and then these fixed camera, sort of security camera in the corner type things, when you were just kind of searching rooms. I mean, I have no sense of time, so maybe it was more months back than I thought it was. Spooky settings. Let's see what that is. Because it's Halloween next week. Oh no, Inception. Oh, it's from the bad old days before I started adding all of the timestamps onto the I found it. I just don't know what the game is called. Pinnacle Point. Right, so if you're watching this, developer of Tamara, go and check out another game called Pinnacle Point game. Sort of a Alan Wake homage. But I remember commenting when I played this that it did quite a good job of mixing the camera modes, because it does, like I said, when you're outside, you're doing combat and stuff, it Alan Wakes over the shoulder. And then there are moments when you're in more of a kind of story exploration mode, and then it goes to the fixed cameras. And I think that's a good way of kind of having your cake and eating it and being able to do both things. But the way that it's currently handled in Tamara is it's sort of happening on the fly while you're under threat. And you sort of don't know which camera you're going to get, because sometimes when you aim, it gives you down the sight and sometimes it doesn't. And I think sort of making it modal and saying, right, the player is in danger now, we're in action mode, move the camera. And then when we're not in, we can kind of do more kind of artsy cinematic stuff with the camera the rest of the time. And I know that there is a kind of line of thinking, and I've even said this in the past, that, you know, the reason why Resident Evil 1 and 2 are scary is because the fixed cameras mean you can't always see the enemy coming towards you, and you're kind of blind firing off, and that's part of the disempowerment that makes those games scary. But this does feel like it's tuned a little bit more towards being shooting. There's a lot of enemies in the demo, and there's a reason why, as survival horror games, you know, your Dead Space, your Resident Evil 4, as they became more shootery, they sort of dropped that camera. And this kind of feels like it's trying to be both types of thing, and I don't think that they blend as well as they could. I feel like everything I saw about this first game sort of suggested that the developer is quite conscientious, including the way that's presented on it. So I imagine they're already aware of this problem, and they just need a nudge to kind of either pick a lane or come up with a solution that uses one mode in one situation and one in another. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. Like I said, if you're working on a third-person action game, it's a difficult set of things to do. The key phrase you're looking for is 3 Cs. It is a whole kind of sub-discipline within game design, within game development, of like, how do we make cameras, controls, and characters good in games? And it's like a whole person's job in a bigger team. And if you go out there and look, you will find resources under 3 Cs of game design, because it's like a whole. It's like you will see it in people's job title. You will see someone that says, you know, senior technical designer 3 Cs. That's their job for like 3 years working on a AAA game. You know, we had that kind of conversation at the start of like, does this mean don't make a character-driven action game as an indie developer? Absolutely not, but it does mean that you are taking on the work of making that aspect of your game good, and that's always the case with whatever type of game you choose to make. You can make games purely based on what you want to play, but if you don't have the skills to make that type of game, then you need to acknowledge that what you're doing is a hobby and not a commercial project. If you want to make games and make a living doing that, you need to focus a little bit more on what you're capable of doing, and that might not be this type of game. We've seen 2 games today that felt very capable, and one that felt like just kind of someone putting together all the parts they thought needed to be in a game and not thinking about like the quality of the individual parts and how they need to feel and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, thank you all for joining today. We've got March is kind of an action focused month for these Thursday streams. We've got sort of auto battlers next week. Then we're doing Bullet Heavens and Bullet Hells the week after that. And then some sort of... I'm trying to do like action games one week and then kind of more thinky games the next week and then action games the week after that. So that I alternate, because I often don't gravitate more towards the action games. And as you saw today, I like them when they're done well. I just tend to find that it's a category of games where more games are being produced, and it's kind of harder to do them well. So go and check those out. I'm gonna drop if you're on the Discord and you've seen this stream, then you're gonna get I'll send the friend invites over on the gaming channel in a minute, so you can grab those if you're like the first person to see that. And yeah, have a good rest of the week. Next week we will have the same stream on Thursday, and on Wednesday we will have the community playtest stream, which is just games by people that support the channel on Patreon. We'll see what people have been working on then. Similar sort of thing, just more games played more quickly. Have a good rest of the week. I'm gonna just switch over to my screen, and if you want links to any of the games, they should already be on the stream description if you're on YouTube, but I will also add them on the timestamps later on as well.